Guys, if any of you have this on, just make sure you mute. Or you all just on the Zoom chat, eh?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, guys, we're about to go live any moment. I think, are we not there yet? No. Okay. We never know, we might be live. I can always, should I stop and try again? Yeah. Hey guys, if we are live, good to be there with you. We're just trying to figure out if that is the case or not. Always these awkward moments of silence. You're live. Okay, we are live indeed, so I called it right. Well, good evening, everyone. It's great to be here with you. My name's Donovan. If you don't know me, part of Common Ground Constantiaberg, and I'm here with my fantastic friends and guests. And yeah, we're welcoming you. I know there's teens from all over the place. How's it, Cameron? We've got some youth with us here from Common Ground. I can see we've got guys from New Gen in Somerset West, guys from West Coast Church, Odyssey, Life Changes, Jubilee. Great to be here with you guys, and of course anyone else who's dialed in to be with us. Before I introduce our guests tonight, let me just say a couple of things just to set up the evening. Firstly, I want to say that it's been an unusual season, this COVID season. We've all had our own experiences. We've all had our own, I guess, both difficulties and challenges, and also some good times. But I think I've become aware that teenagers experience kind of a very unique set of challenges, a very unique set of difficulties. And so it's been on my heart to really speak to teens, interact with teens, start a conversation with teens that really focuses in on them, their experiences, and what's happening for them. And so that's what this is all about. And I'm calling it a conversation because although we're going to be chatting, we do want to interact with you. So feel free to leave a comment on the YouTube page, and we're going to answer questions and reply to your comments. Alternatively, you can see my number up on the screen. Feel free to send me a WhatsApp if you want a more private question, and I'll of course keep that confidential. Likely not to have your number, so don't worry. So you can just send me a WhatsApp directly, and we'll interact with you. And then just to say, tonight isn't specifically about anxiety and depression. We're speaking about coping with COVID, and we're just wanting to speak about general mental health, general mental well-being. And of course, we may talk about those topics. They're bound to come up, but that's not the focus of where we're going tonight. I think that at the end of the day, as pastors and as health professionals and counselors, what we really want to do is help. We want to help you, teen. We want to help all of us as we navigate these unprecedented times. And so our hope is that tonight is just that, helpful for you. Okay, let me hand over. I'm going to say Mike, then Steve, then Helen. Why don't you guys take a moment to introduce yourselves to everyone?
Cool. Good evening, everybody. As introduced, my name is Mike, and I am a high school teacher and school counselor. I've been doing that for the past 8 years, and before that, worked as a youth pastor for about 6 years. So that's a brief history on me.
Hi, yeah, I'm Stephen, married to Anna, and I've got 3 teenage kids. 19, 17, and 14. Used to be a youth pastor, and I'm now a pastor at Jubilee Community Church in Cape Town.
Hi there, my name is Helen Malgas. I am a counselling psychologist based in Plumstead. I have a special interest in working with adolescents and young people. I'm married and I have 2 children of my own, an 11-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I'm really excited to be a part of this conversation this evening.
Brilliant, guys. Well, good to be together. How's it, Jack and Johnny and Tegan? Great to have you guys with us. I see more and more guys are coming on, which is fantastic. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to answer 3 main questions to kind of guide this conversation. And those questions are, firstly, we're going to answer the question, as a teenager, what can I expect to be feeling, experiencing in this last season of the various levels of lockdown and COVID? And then secondly, we want to ask the question, what can I do to help myself? In other words, how do I nurture my mental health and well-being? And then thirdly, we want to talk about how do I help my mates just coping and getting through this season. How's it to you guys that are coming online? So Helen, let's kick it off with the first question. As a teenager, what can we be expecting to be feeling, experiencing during this lockdown season?
Thanks, Don. I think the big thing for me when I think about the season, I think it's just a feeling of being quite unsettled. And things have been so out of the norm. And I think I can relate this to losses. So a loss of your normal day-to-day routine. For example, you're not going to school as you normally would. You're not seeing your friends as you normally would. You can't go out as you normally would. Okay, now with lockdown level 3, things are maybe a little bit easier, but there are losses on so many levels. Also just the loss of spontaneity. So, you can't just decide that I'm going to go and grab a coffee with somebody, because you can no longer do that. So that loss of connection, I think for me, is what I have been seeing in my practice, and certainly with my own children also, just losses at many levels that leave us feeling quite unsettled and maybe a little bit irritated and annoyed because we can't do the things that we normally would have done. So those are some of the things that I've been picking up, some of the themes that I've been seeing. But then also maybe a sense of disappointment at missing out on, big events. Maybe you were in matric this year, and I know schools have a lot of tradition around matric and ending high school. And suddenly, that's not there anymore, or that looks different. So those are some of my ideas about how things have changed, or what teenagers are experiencing at this time.
Great, man. Anyone else want to pipe in? Just go for it. Sure. Mike, you want to say something, buddy?
Yeah, I'll just briefly say there's obviously a lot of uncertainty in terms of academics as well. So just in terms of people worried about upcoming matric exams and what that means for next year and university applications. So I know that affects a lot of the grade 11s as well. So those of you in senior grades, totally normal to be feeling a sense of uncertainty around the academics. And it's kind of been mentioned that you normally be able to go and ask questions to your teachers around like when your exams are and what's happening. But obviously at the moment, not even they know. So there has been quite a lot of uncertainty in those areas. So it'd be normal to be feeling worried about that.
Yeah, and it's not only that people don't have the questions; it's that no one really has the answers, and we're all kind of in that same boat, kind of waiting.
Yeah.
I mean, Helen and you guys, Mike, you've mentioned a few things like the uncertainty, different forms of loss. Familiarity, freedom, just spontaneity. How does that impact, would you say, a teenager? So, we might be experiencing these things, but, how do maybe we express, whether we realize it or not, these kind of things and emotions that we're experiencing? Make sense?
Yep. Yeah. So I think some of us may just feel really sad and may feel really kind of down in the dumps, and maybe feeling like I don't feel like doing anything. So a sense of just loss of motivation. I think feeling alone because we are isolated, and whether we're with our families or not, sometimes that's just not enough. I mean, I know I love my family dearly, but I also need connections with other people. So just the sense of feeling quite alone, but also feeling quite anxious because of this big unknown. I think that when we don't know about what's going to happen, it creates a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear. And also our mind then we start kind of creating fantasies and start overthinking, and our mind just runs away with all kinds of crazy, weird ideas.
Yes. And just a reminder, guys, as we continue the conversation, if any questions are coming to your mind, you can write them in on the comments section. Alternatively, my number's on the screen, and you can drop me a WhatsApp and we'll reply to you or answer your comments. And then we're answering the question for those of you that have just joined us. What can we, as a teenager, what can you expect to be experiencing during the season of lockdown with its unique challenges? Go for it, Mike.
Yeah, I was just going to add that, you might find that small things that in the past may not have worried you or may not have concerned you, whether it's a family situation or something with your friends, or anything, might feel a lot worse than it did, a couple of months ago. So things that normally wouldn't irritate you, you find you are incredibly irritated by or angry by. It's just to do with, I think, the general anxiety and general sense of loss that a lot of people are feeling, kind of amplifies any other normal kind of process that you may go through. So don't be surprised if that's kind of going on as well.
Yeah, it's such a good point, Mike. I think if we think of some TV shows, these what they like to do is to put people in a very stressed environment and then to see how people respond. And the reason why those programs work is because actually when we're under a pressurized situation, it doesn't tend to bring out the best in us. So I think, just being aware of that can actually just help you process your own emotions, which can seem more amplified at this time.
But I think also part of the challenge is that some of the coping mechanisms that maybe you normally had have suddenly been removed. So maybe you play hockey, for example, and that's a really good outlet for you. Suddenly, there's no more hockey. If you play soccer, that's no longer there. So I think also the removal of those normal healthy coping mechanisms also just makes a really stressful situation seem that much worse.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And so I guess what we're saying is here, you're experiencing heightened emotions. So maybe things that you're normally feeling are a little bit more extreme, a little bit more intense. And so I guess not to be overly surprised if that happens, but also maybe some new emotions. So maybe some anger where there wasn't anger before. And I guess just spinning off that, it's not exactly on this topic, but I just think maybe around just having a bit of, I guess the word is just grace for our friends. If people maybe react super intensely, or a family member, and we just need to understand that actually we're all in a bit of a pressure cooker here. So maybe count to 10 before we do anything rash.
Yeah, some great bit of counsel that I heard was from a guy who trains people for submarines, and he's got to kind of prepare them to last 87 days underwater. And one of his counsel for people that he trained is assume respect, because he said, when you're in those close quarters and under lockdown, it actually it's going to produce those moments of tension and emotive response. And he said, in those moments, actually assume that the other person respects you rather than assuming the worst, which I just thought was helpful.
But also, I think in turn, to just pick up on that, is also to show respect to yourself, because sometimes we can end up feeling so guilty about, why am I feeling sad? For example, I've got nothing to feel sad about. I'm safe. I maybe live in a good home. I have food. And so sometimes there's an element, there's a feeling of guilt which comes in. So I think this idea of respecting others, but also respecting your own feelings, and not to feel guilty for feeling a particular way, because they are your feelings. So to just own those feelings.
Yeah, brilliant, man. And then, of course, you know, there's the pressure of schoolwork, and so that's kind of a new environment. I guess that's also having an impact, a different kind of pressure, maybe more self-management needed, or I don't know, just quite different. And I guess that's also having an impact on us, Mel. I mean, Helen?
Yeah, I think so, because I think that, you know, for some people, they can work quite well on their own. For some of you, maybe, you know, you love just being on your own and getting on with it and being able to explore things. But for other people, they really do need the structure of a class and of school. Mike, I'm wondering from your side, you know, can you tell us what you've noticed with some of your students at your school around these challenges?
Yeah, so I think it probably depends on the school as well and how they've dealt with academics over this lockdown period. So I know for us, initially when term was supposed to go back, we started with some online schooling and sending work out to learners to all grades, 8s to 12s at that time. And some people responded very well to it. In fact, some learners have chosen to kind of stay at home through this time where they're kind of allowed to be at home, some of the grade 12s, because they feel they work better in that space. Some have come and said to me, like, they've learned that next year if they study, they have to go somewhere where there's a class because they know they will never be able to do it by themselves. So, I think there's a wide variety of things that people are feeling and are dealing with. And I guess the one positive thing that you can do is try and view this as an opportunity to learn something a bit more about how you function. I think that can be something constructive that you can maybe take out of this season as well, guys, is to look at, okay, what have been my strengths and weaknesses in this time? And what have I learned about myself, and how can I apply that to my life going forward? So I think that would be quite helpful, yeah.
Brilliant, man. Let me just say, how's it to the Frequency and the Right crew? They've got like 48 people on one view there. So how's it, guys? Maybe we can start making our way into the second question, which really is, so we're experiencing these heightened emotions. I think good to be self-aware, good to just to know that, you know, a lot of how we're feeling is actually quite normal, and we can just think about it, manage it, talk about it, but also how, you know, what can we do? How do we help our mental health, mental wellness and our health? So let's change tack a little bit. And just before we do that, I've got a question that's come through about social media. And the question is, how will social media like Instagram and Facebook affect my anxieties during COVID-19? Helen, maybe you can give that one a first stab.
Yeah, I think, you know, social media can be quite overwhelming. And the challenge is that there's no filter. So you have all this information just coming at you, and you can just kind of take it all on. I think the one thing that I often mention to my clients is that you need to make decisions about how you consume social media. So maybe there are some things that you go, okay, I'm just not going to read that because I need to protect myself. So to be discerning about what it is that you consume on social media, because I think that is the choice that you have. It's not just coming at you. You can choose what you click on. I had a conversation with someone yesterday, and she said, you know, I feel like I'm addicted to social media. And I said, yes, but in that there is agency. And so you are able to say, okay, I'm not going to go on my phone for the next hour or so. So I think that, you know, it's about boundaries, setting healthy boundaries for yourself so that it doesn't become all consuming. Because I think social media can really take you down some dark places, some rabbit holes that you really don't want to go to. So I think it's just about being wise about, you know, how you use social media.
Great.
And I think part of that is it's also discerning what your triggers are. So around anxiety. So maybe for you, it's the health threat, or maybe it's the kind of social acceptance or kind of political discussions that are happening. Try and work out what is causing you the anxiety, and then try and not feed the beast.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one here. And I guess in many ways, if you're on social media all the time, you know, those losses that you're experiencing can just be heightened. You kind of constantly feel that loss over and over again, but at the same time, you're just wanting to stay connected. And so, you know, this is hugely how you stay connected. So, I mean, maybe it's also the idea of maybe giving someone a call or a video chat and, I don't know, interacting with mates and friends, setting up chats or whatever.
Yeah, Don, it's a bit of a catch-22 because I think on the one hand, you know, there's such a need to be connected and to stay connected. On the other hand, there's also such a negative component to it. So, you know, that's where I think, you know, finding other ways to connect with people that are more personable as opposed to just consuming and not interacting. Because I think it's in the interaction that connection comes.
Yeah.
Brilliant, man. Well, so let's answer the question, you know, what can teens do to support themselves? Mike, I'm going to hand over to you. Why don't you kick us off giving this one a go?
It's just kind of a good time in that we've been speaking about connection and social media and things like that. It's kind of one of my points. So I'd kind of always like to say to try and keep your life as simple as possible in some ways. So when things start to feel a bit kind of uncertain, when things start to feel a bit shaky and way out of control, you know, you try and control the things that you can. And so I've just got four points to try and work from. So the first one is to connect. So to stay connected with your friends, with your family, to stay connected with your support network. It's so important in a time where you are more isolated. You're used to seeing a lot of friends every day at school or even in the holidays, and now you haven't really been able to do that. So stay connected, stay close to your support base, and maybe not just through text. So maybe, you know, voice notes is one step up, I guess, but you know, maybe some video calls and that type of thing. And then the kind of other three is to move, eat, and sleep. So to try and get some exercise in or some movement in kind of every day, to make sure that you are eating relatively healthy as well, and to make sure you're getting enough sleep at night, and to make sure that sleep's not at like, you know, ridiculous hours. You can say, well, I got 8 hours, but those 8 hours were from kind of 4 a.m. till 12 midday the next day. That's not always as good as kind of, you know, the regular time. So make sure you're connecting, you're moving, you're eating, and you're sleeping. I think those are kind of the base areas to work from.
That's brilliant, Mike. Connect, move, eat, and sleep. By the way, guys, you feel free to send me a WhatsApp if you want. My number's on the screen. You can also comment on YouTube, and we'll reply to you. And I guess what you're describing, Mike, is routines. I mean, what you're saying is there's actually certain rhythms and activities that will actually help us to cope, help us feel better, kind of release some of the right chemistry into our body that actually helps us do well. And so it's about a little bit of intentionality and building some regular rhythms.
Absolutely, yeah. I think just before others chime in, it's also quite helpful to, you know, maybe accomplish small tasks during the day. That's going to be the worst thing to hear, but, you know, even something small like making your bed in the morning is a really good thing in some ways to do, or something like that. You put some effort into something, and there's an end goal, and you see that something is accomplished, and that can do wonders for kind of your mental space. That'll translate into kind of the rest of your days as well. Yeah.
And I think maybe just to add to that, I think that at the end of the day, maybe to have a space where you look back and you reflect on something that you are thankful for. You know, there's been a lot of research done into the area of gratitude and acknowledging that, you know, gratitude in some way can improve our mental health and our mental well-being. So that's maybe one idea that I can offer. But then also to have a little bit of a future focus, so to think about maybe something that you are looking forward to, or planning something that you can look forward to, whether it's a walk in the mountains, or you know, just a good movie or book that you may be wanting to read, to have something that you can look forward to. But also, I think to factor in some downtime. What I'm finding with a lot of, especially grade 11s and 12s, is that there's so much pressure to work. And I hear from some people that they are working for like 6 or 7 hours a day on their schoolwork. And I'm like, gosh, I really think that's a bit much. So to just maintain a sense of balance, and in your routine to think about, how do I have moments of quiet, moments of stillness, so that I can rejuvenate and re-energize.
Yeah. And I guess one of the things we don't really realize, being online, is that we often don't have those kind of interruptions, those times between meetings, walking, chatting, that just give us that mental break. They also help us to like kind of process what's happening, even if we're just walking aimlessly, and everything can just get a little bit intense, and go when we're online all the time. So I think that downtime is brilliant, and maybe not only kind of once a day, but actually to think about our day, and if we've chatted to someone, don't go into the next chat and the next chat and the next chat, because you're actually just running a bit hard and we don't realize it sometimes, Steve, I've had a question. You can say what you're going to say, blend it in with this one. I've had a question and I thought I'd ask it to you. Someone's asked, how do we maintain our relationship with God in a time of lockdown? Sometimes without the regular meetings, without seeing guys, it's almost like that can kind of go on the back burner. And maybe you can chat to that a little bit after you've said what you wanted to say.
Cool. Yeah, it segues nicely, because I think what I wanted to say is, as a pastor, through these moments of challenge, the real awesome thing is that we don't need to just do this alone and just try and discover these coping mechanisms to kind of pull up our socks and try harder. But actually, at these moments where we're not coping, actually the message of the Bible is that we come to a God who is compassionate and empathizes with our challenges, and actually wants us to bring our burdens to him. And if you are a Christ follower, it's easy to kind of forget that, because you're in such an unusual season. But even if you're not, maybe you're just checking in here because you were interested in the topic of mental and emotional health. Something that I can encourage you is to bring your challenges and burdens to God. God, the God of the Bible, is a God who loves you and cares about you and does want to help you. I think to the specific question that was posted, I think we do need to try and find new rhythms of connecting with God. And the reality is all of our rhythms have been affected. And so it's to try and think carefully about that, and to try and prioritize that. And that's one of the ways that we can help each other, is just say, maybe, do a FaceTime or a WhatsApp call with a friend and just talk through, hey, when could we kind of connect with God in our schedule, and then just kind of help encourage others to stick to that routine. But I think without a routine, it's so easy just for one day to blend into the other, and actually we end up missing our most vital connection with God.
Yeah, that's brilliant, Steve. And so, Steve, if you were to say, like, what are the 1, 2, or 3 brilliant spiritual rhythms, habits to build into maybe like a day or a week, just in terms of building that relationship with God, what would you say?
I mean, I think you got the bread and butter, reading the Bible and praying. So try to think when you're going to do that. But then actually, kind of gathering for church. I know it's weird because we can't do that in person. But, I think all the youth groups are represented here. I've got an online church meeting. And so to try and get that as part of your rhythm so that you don't get out of that. And then I know that the youth groups are all doing kind of online opportunities. And I know sometimes that can feel a little bit difficult. You've been doing Zoom calls at school, and then you can feel like, oh, do I really want to do another one? But actually just to try and prioritize meeting with other Christians. And I think when you push through, you'll get the benefits of those things. So I think the prayer and Bible reading, and then, sticking with your community, your church community online, and your youth group community.
Great.
I know for me, I've certainly found just, the rhythm of Sunday morning and doing church with my family, but then also being able to speak in a small group about what church was about. I think that has been really helpful for me. And I think also just, to do it as a family. So if there are parents who are watching, I think maybe just to encourage that, even though, the beauty is you can do church in your pajamas. You don't have to get dressed. So I think that's also, you can kind of drag my children along. But when we get there, I think just the benefit of worship together, it is just so beneficial, I think.
For me as a parent, actually, one of the real nice things of lockdown is doing church with all of my kids, because, they'll normally go sit with their mates and that for a church meeting, but now we kind of all together in the lounge watching together. And so as a dad, that's something that I've really enjoyed during this lockdown.
Yeah, just Gareth, great. Thanks for taking some notes there, man. It's fantastic. Just a reminder, guys, feel free to send in your questions. Steve, I've got another question for you. Someone wrote in and asked, how do I help my mate who's really struggling in their faith right now? Just one or two words on that? I think Mike or Helen, if you want to pipe in.
I think for me, the thing that I would encourage when chatting to a friend is, like, God isn't scared about the situation that you're in. Sometimes we can feel like we've got to put on a kind of a religious front, but if you actually look at the Psalms, you find the psalmists, they're really bringing their concerns and their difficulties to God. So I think encouraging your friend that if you're frustrated or you're anxious or you're depressed, you can actually bring those sorrows, those laments to God and actually speak to him about it. He's not looking for you just to come when you've got it all together, but you can actually come to God in the exact state that you actually find yourself in.
I know for me personally, over the last few years, like the times that I've been going through the most stuff, the tendency or the temptation is to kind of keep that to yourself. So I think it's great that I think if you have friends that are struggling and you know about it, it's an amazing start, because it means that you guys are communicating and you're talking. But then secondly, just to echo what Steve is saying, and Helen mentioned it earlier as well, in terms of like allow yourself to feel those feelings. So chat to your mates, encourage them to speak about what they're going through to you, encourage them to pray through what they're going through, even if it feels like, that those pressures are kind of going out and they're not landing somewhere. Encourage them to work that process, that God does listen, that God does love you. So it's so important.
And then I think if your friend is really struggling and you feel that it's quite overwhelming for you, then I think for you to go and speak to somebody about that, and maybe just to get some wisdom and some counsel about what the next steps could possibly be. I think at this time we really need to support one another, and I think connection and connectivity is going to get us through this. And
that's so
and
good,
Helen, speaking about connections and helping people, I've had a question come through. It was a little bit earlier. How do we best serve or help our friends who are dealing with anxiety and depression? So, if one of our friends we know struggles, how do we help? How do we come alongside? What's helpful? What's unhelpful?
I think just to be there and to hear them. To not offer advice. I think sometimes, we're very quick to offer advice and to say, have you tried this? This really worked for me. Just to listen and to show compassion and care. I think that's really important. I think sometimes there's a danger in Christian circles to offer, just kind of trite comments about, but God is there, and to almost minimize through this kind of Christianese, minimize people's feelings. And so it's really important that you validate what somebody is feeling, but that you let them know that you are there. And I know with some of my clients, what is really helpful is to have somebody who's just checking in with them, even if it's just like a hi, I'm here. I think that is really helpful. And that's helped me in moments when I've been struggling, to know that there are people who are on the other side, who've got my back, who are checking up on me. So that would be, that could be what I can offer. I think also if you feel that your friend is really in danger of hurting him or herself in any way, then to also just not take that, because you have to take that a little bit further. Not to break their trust in any way, but to say, like, I'm really concerned. Who can I speak to with you about this?
Yeah.
So those are some ideas that I can offer.
Yeah. Can I just chime in there just to say that I think if you feel like it's getting like a bit hectic with your friend, please speak to someone that you trust and you feel like someone who can help you. So whether that's a trusted adult or parent or teacher or something, because it's the best thing you can do for your friend is to get them help that they may need. And secondly, you need to also know that you aren't responsible to bring about, healing or well-being in your friend's life. It's amazing to be a support for them, but your job is not to kind of single-handedly shoulder that burden. So definitely, please seek advice, chat to someone, do the most loving thing for that person, which would be to kind of get them the right kind of help.
Brilliant. So,
but
Gareth,
I think also don't forget about yourself, because I see many wonderful friends wanting to just give and give and give, and at the end of the day you are so depleted yourself that you've got nothing left. So just remember what Stephen said about respect, and that respect goes both ways.
That's great. So I mean, Gareth's making some great summaries for us. So it's listen to them, it's validating their feelings. Don't be too quick to give advice. I guess sometimes we also, I don't know if it's the true, but I certainly sometimes maybe struggle to chat to my friends at that level. But I think just to be front-footed in a season like this, if you think, one of your friends is struggling, just move towards them. You don't have to wait for them to come to you or wait to hear about, just phone them and say, how's it? And say, I care about you. What's going on? I think that's so important. And then Helen, you said we just got to look after ourselves. So I think be careful not to take people's burdens onto ourselves and to now carry, their weight as well as ours. But I guess as Christ followers, what we're trying to point people to Jesus as much as we can and say, ultimately he's your help. But then also we need to have people that we can trust and that we can chat to, and we must encourage them to go and chat to people that can help them as well. Yeah, that's fantastic. Guys, anything that we haven't chatted about that's been on your thoughts as we think about mental health, well-being? What can we be feeling? How can we help ourselves? How do we help our friends? Anything else coming to mind for you guys?
I think maybe one thing that really does define the season is uncertainty. And as Mike said, the challenge is normally if you're a teenager and you're uncertain, you go speak to your parents or you go speak to a teacher, they're able to bring certainty. But we're in a moment here where the adults don't have the answers for how this is actually going to play out. And that can be very destabilizing. And I just really want to encourage you that we can come to God with our uncertainty. And even though we don't have the answers around how this is going to play out, actually, we do believe that God is sovereign and in control. And so we can actually trust him because he knows the outcome, even though we don't.
Yeah.
And Steve, I've had a question that's come through. That's it's a tricky one, maybe not. We talk about the peace of God. When in times of stress, in times maybe when we're feeling that anger, we're feeling that loneliness, we're feeling separated, maybe we're struggling with some of the losses. How do we access that peace? How do we allow that to actually penetrate our circumstances?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is acknowledging that there's so much a part of the season that does result in legitimate concern and legitimate worry. So I think just to think I shouldn't be concerned about anything, I think is to be unrealistic about the current situation that we actually do find ourselves in. So just feeling anxious about things, feeling stressed, that's actually normal given this situation. I think there is a promise, however, in the Bible that we can have a peace which transcends understanding, which means that it's a peace not rooted in everything being rosy and fine, but actually a peace that's rooted in God. And actually in that, it's actually quite liberating, because we can be really honest with God with the uncertainty that we feel in, the legitimate uncertainty, but then to ask him for a peace that actually transcends this kind of corona reality at the moment.
And Steve, as I've thought about the peace of God, because I think we've all needed to experience that at different times. I can't think of the exact text now. Is it Thessalonians? But you know, it kind of speaks about, for me, it's about bringing our lives to God in prayer. So it's bringing our requests to God. It's bringing our worries to God. It's about, I think, I call it kind of prayerfully processing. So like, I think about how I'm feeling. I think about what I want to do. I think about what I can't do. And as I talk to God, and I release those things to him, and I invite him kind of both into how I'm feeling, but also into how I get to the other side. For me, that's how I kind of start to access this peace of God, where, you know, I start to relax. I kind of start to feel less tense. I start to realize, you know, life's not in my control. You know, things are out of control, but God is in control. I can lean in him. I can rest in him. So, yeah, for me, it's a lot about kind of processing with God in prayer. Brings on this sense of peace.
The chapter that's in is actually Philippians chapter 4, and it's just the beginning bit of Philippians 4. It's such a great place to process with, because it is, the Lord is near. So it's reminding yourself that God's near, and then present your request before God. So it's being honest about the situation, and then this promise that the peace of God, which transcends understanding, will guard your heart and mind in Christ Jesus. And it's interesting there that they're two things that we need God in at this time. One is our heart, our emotions, which can become very unsettled, but then also our mind, because we can, our imaginations can quickly run away with us and really end up amplifying anxiety. So coming to God, presenting that request, asking for a peace that will guard both our heart and mind.
And I think maybe one practical tip that I can offer here is to, because sometimes in the chaos we can't see clearly, or we can't remember those truths that Jesus has given us, to actually write those down and maybe kind of stick them up somewhere on your mirror, on your wall, so that you can be reminded of these things. You know, and I think also to, you know, it comes back to, we spoke earlier about social media, but it's also about consuming social media that is uplifting. And there's so much out there that is really good. But to just have these things that can just bring us back and ground us. And I like what you were saying, Steve, about guard your heart and guard your mind, because I often find that's where the devil is so sneaky, in terms of just getting in there and, you know, putting these thoughts, and really it's about holding on to what is pure and what is right and what is true.
Guys, I want to just change tack for a second. We've got about 5 or so minutes to go. I've had a question come through around, you know, how do we be a support system to maybe friends who have family members that are actually testing positive for COVID? Any advice on how we can kind of be a support to those guys?
I think very similarly along the lines of how we support somebody who's in trouble. I think just to be there, to be a compassionate witness, to hear and maybe allow them to tell you what it is that they're struggling with. And then just again, to just keep the channel of communication and connectivity open. Again, you know, it's a big unknown. People do recover, but people don't. So to also just be realistic and to journey with somebody along, join your friend, I think, in the journey.
Yeah.
And then
go
for it, Mike.
I was going to say, just also, you know, allow them to journey at their own pace. Don't kind of assume that they should be feeling a certain thing at a certain time. So, you know, if you feel like they should be upset and they're not, that's okay. Let them kind of dictate that pace. Yeah.
Yeah. had a question come through from the crowd in Bosch. What can we do for our parents when they're feeling stressed about maybe money or jobs, employment? Any advice there for how we can be great teens for our parents?
Sure. As a parent myself, I think what would be helpful is just grace. So to understand that parents also have big feelings, as teenagers do, and to allow them to feel those feelings, and maybe to ask them, what are the ways that I can support you at this time? But I think also to know that they are the adults, and so that they will come through for you in whatever that looks like. Yeah.
Steve, you're a parent. Tell us what would be great.
I think it's just being kind of aware that your parents are also undergoing this trial as well, and just kind of acknowledging the challenge of it, and then also trying to support them. I mean, I know as a pastor, I put up some kind of pastoral counsel to our church, and a couple of times my kids have reminded me of that counsel when I haven't been responding as well. So we all, we can know the answers, but then in the moment, the challenges of lockdown and all of that can get to all of us. So actually just being gracious to your parents and actually wanting to support them and pray for them and forgive them when you need to, all of the grace needs to flow both ways.
I've had a few questions that we're not going to have time to get to, but I want to get into this last one because I think it's so important. Someone's asked, and I'm going to follow this as the question, Helen, and maybe you can answer it first up. What if I feel like I'm stuck in life, like I'm not moving forward, not achieving anything, not having purpose? And it's a great question. I think we're all acknowledging that our emotions are a bit all over the show, that our mental wellness is being challenged, but there's things we can do to help ourselves. There's habits, brilliant stuff we've spoken about. How do we know if actually we're in the state that's maybe beyond what's normal, that maybe we should be concerned about how we're feeling, our health, well-being, or even for a friend? So how do we differentiate? Because we're all struggling, but how do we know if we need some intervention here?
Yeah, I think there are two things. I think it's the duration of the symptoms. So how long have you been feeling that stuck? And then secondly, the intensity of the symptoms. So if it's affecting your functionality in, you're not able to look after yourself, you're not able to, you've lost that sense of enjoyment in things that you normally enjoyed. You're not motivated to do things that you would normally do, for example, schoolwork. Maybe you're sleeping more than what you used to. You're not, you've lost your appetite, or you're eating more. So if those kind of symptoms have lasted for 2 weeks or longer, then I think it's time to maybe get some help and speak to somebody about those. So intensity, duration. I think also here is where, maybe your friends can come in, or even parents. If you're noticing any of these symptoms lasting for 2 weeks or longer. Also, if you're feeling almost irrationally anxious, so your worries are just kind of like over the top, and it's getting in the way of you functioning, I think then it's important to seek help. And obviously, if you're feeling, like you just want to end things, if you're having thoughts of suicide, that is very serious. And so to not take those feelings lightly.
And Helen, what is the next step?
The next step, I would say, would be to, speak to your parents. If your relationship with your parents is a little bit rocky, maybe speak to your youth pastor, speak to a trusted adult, and have them guide you, to get the help.
Even a teacher, a sports coach, someone you really trust.
Very often, I find people go to teachers and have them point you in the right direction. And maybe it means that you need to speak to a psychologist or a counselor, and just sift through some of the things that you're going through, and have them normalize what you are feeling, but then maybe in more serious cases to get further help.
Brilliant. And we'll also have your number in the description to the video afterwards, and some other contact numbers and details if people do find themselves in a difficult space very suddenly, and you'll be able to reach out. Okay, any closing comments, guys? We're going to wrap up. I just thought I'd give you one last kind of 30 seconds each if you want it. Mike?
Yeah, I think just stay connected, stay chatting, and yeah, good luck for the upcoming few weeks of school. I know some of you have been working for kind of 8 weeks online already, and now you've still got another kind of 7 of term to go. So it's going to be, could feel like a long one. So good luck for the next couple of weeks, guys.
Great, man. Steve, you want to say anything?
Yeah, I think what I'd want to say is don't social distance from God. You know, connect with him. He really wants to help you at this time. He's got grace and empowering for you.
Yeah. Helen?
I think to see the gifts that the season gives us, I think there are many opportunities, gifts of time with your family, gifts to try something different, to maybe be a little creative. So to just see the gifts that the season offers us.
Great, man. And then for those you listening, I mean, I haven't been able to get to all the questions, but I'll do everything I can to just send you a voice note and to reply to those questions in the next day. But I wanted to thank you guys so much for taking time out on this chilly Friday night in Cape Town to join us. Really appreciate your inputs. And to all the teens out there, as Mike said, it is a hectic time. It is a difficult time. And we just want to acknowledge that. We also celebrate that God is good. And we really wish you guys the best for the rest of this year and onwards. Okay, guys, let's say goodbye. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks.
Ciao.
Yes. Have a good evening.
Peace.
Cheers, everybody.